Hi, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing another walkthrough service here on this vintage Shakespeare Wondercast model 1795. This reel just so happens to belong to my father, and he doesn't really fish anymore these days. But I found it kicking around one day, and I said, it's time to get it cleaned up at least and make it pretty to look at. So this is an old school spin cast reel here, so it's got the button. This actually does have a star drag on it. So it's a pretty versatile reel, actually, for, a lot of different kinds of freshwater fishing and whatnot. So, we're just going to get into it. We're going to go through all the steps. I've already cleaned and serviced this reel because it was rather dusty and dirty, definitely in need of some grease and some lubricants and whatnot. So, um, first thing that I recommend when you're working on this reel actually is to start here on the handle side and take this handle nut off. There's actually quite a few pieces to this push button reel, unlike Zebco reels that I've been working on lately. There's a lot more mechanics to this, actually. So we're going to get these parts trays out here. So you've got a nut, and then there's a little tiny star washer that's hiding under there. And this one's a little rusted, unfortunately. Not a lot we can do about that, but it's not going to affect much, really. A little star washer. Okay. I do not have a schematic on this reel, and I would imagine it's kind of hard to come by online. You could probably purchase one on eBay, I suppose. So you got your star wheel, your drag wheel right there. And then we've got a washer, just a regular washer. And then there's actually a spring in here. It needs to come out. Okay. I like to kind of keep all these pieces in the proper order here just because, frankly, it is easy to get them mixed up when you're going to put them back in. Okay, so now there's actually a little cam lobe in here, if you will, and it doesn't come out so easy sometimes. It's starting to come out though here just a little bit. There it is there. Okay, and it's got those two teeth on it. Okay, you want to make sure that that goes back in. Now, one of the things that has to happen here is there's a nut on here, and this nut has to come off. Okay, and you kind of want to do this carefully. If you, like myself, find that there's a little bit of rust in this area, I highly recommend just hitting it with some penetrating lube, some WD-40 or whatnot, and let that soak in there for a little bit, because this was a little bit rusted in here, and that's obviously not an uncommon problem. But this is a 5/8 nut right here, and you just want to unspin that like so. Okay, and then that will come off. All right, now that we've taken off all those pieces and parts, now we can kind of get into the rest of the reel, so to speak. So we can take the top cap off here. We can also take this off with a flathead slotted screwdriver. And this is not a screw that comes out all the way. It's actually retained inside here. Okay, you can't really see it, all right, but it doesn't fall out. Okay, so you want to do an inspection in here. And I'm just going to talk about the lube points as we go along here, just to kind of save time and whatnot. So we want to clean all this up as we're taking this stuff out, and then we're going to take our reel oil and we're going to hit these points here. Okay, just with a little bit of Reel X oil or any other fishing reel oil. Put that off to the side. It's helpful to make sure you clean any sand or debris out of here. Okay, and then the spool on this reel, you actually have to turn it like that. You see there's a little click right there, and then once you do that, it'll come out. It goes into these notches here. Great engineering for its day. This reel is probably like a early 60s vintage reel, and they actually did think it through with the mechanics of it, but there are quite a few mechanics for the reel that it is, I will admit, but it's great engineering. Shakespeare is a USA company here, and they've been around a long time, and they've been kind of a staple in the fishing industry for affordable fishing equipment, if you will. Okay, so now next step is to take these screws out. I'm actually missing one here on both sides, I believe. But it's not the end of the world. One of these days I'll probably try to find some replacements for those, but not right now. So these are really small screws. Okay, so we're going to pull those out like so. Yeah, this reel, hasn't been fished in decades. I used to use this reel when I was a young kid fishing with my dad. We'd go down to the creek that was nearby where we lived, and it was just the perfect reel, for that kind of fishing. Okay, now you notice that we got a few things that are just kind of falling apart on us right here. Okay, so our button came out. I'm going to show you how to put all these pieces back, of course. All right, and we've got a spring, and then we've got our plate. We're just going to set all that off to the side right here. No big deal. All right, so we can see our innards here, and you can see we've cleaned everything, and everything is lubed up, okay, accordingly. Now, the next part to come is to take off this side here, handle side. And again, we got a couple of screws here. These screws are the same as the others on the other side, so you don't have to worry about getting the wrong ones in the wrong spots. But for a spin cast reel, this is pretty heavy duty, I'd say. Okay, so we've got some pieces and parts here that begin to come loose. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these parts here real quick, right? And then we're just going to kind of slowly put them back together in sequence, just to kind of conserve time. So here we actually have these pieces here. Now, you want to be careful taking these pieces apart here, because there's actually this spring here that attaches to the dog. Okay, I'm not going to take it all the way out, but you will understand how this works. Also, there's another thin washer here that I forgot about that rests at the base of this underneath that nut. Okay, and we'll talk about that when we go back to put that on. Okay, but if you're going to pull all these pieces out, you don't want to just go ripping this out. You need to get this spring undone from the dog. Okay, and clean all this stuff up really well. Okay, and then put these pieces back together. Okay, once you do that, if you want to take the dog off, there is a snap ring there. I usually find it's not necessary in this kind of a setup. You just want to clean it and hit it with a bead of oil. Okay, clean the shaft off of this really well on on the inside here. You can see you just want to make sure that that's a nice clean surface there, and make sure that the spring is in good shape, and you're good to go. Okay, now we've got our main gear. Clean it off. Okay, take the brass wire brush, such as this. Okay, make sure it's brass and not steel. Clean those teeth out really good. Okay, and then you've also got this mechanical shaft here. You want to clean this off, all right, with some 4-0 steel wool. Get that cleaned up, all right, that stuff there, clean it up. There's a drag washer here underneath. You want to clean it off, and it goes back on dry, okay? And then once all that's complete, you take some reel grease like this, Penn Precision Blue Grease, and get that on those teeth, and you're good to go there. Okay. Note that there is another drag washer here. Okay, and it goes underneath here dry. Okay, you don't put oil or anything on it. Okay, that's how those work for these reels here. Okay, so that's that whole side of the handle assembly right there. Okay, that's all you need to do. The key component is make sure that you clean up the parts really good. Use WD-40, use Q-tips, just regular household Q-tips. Okay, take your time to clean up the pieces really, really well. Make sure that there aren't any metal filings and things like that, or old grease. One thing that happens a lot with these reels, especially these kinds of old reels is, a lot of folks, they'll just pack them with more grease and more oil, but they don't really go through the time or the effort to clean them. And believe me, it really pays off, when you actually take the time to do that stuff. Okay, now we have the rest of our assembly here, and you might wonder, okay, well, how do we get all this undone? Okay, well, it's not too difficult, really. You just have to take your time doing this here. Okay, so this cam here has to come out first. Okay, and you can get it loose like this without too many problems at all. Okay, but then you have to kind of finagle this a little bit here. And there's a few different steps to this. By pulling on this here, you got to pull it way down. Okay, and then you can kind of gently rock this out. Okay, you want to clean these shafts up really well. Okay, and then we're going to go back with the blue grease, of course. All right, now the last step here is right here. Okay, so we've got some pieces and parts. We've got a pinion gear, we've got a spring, and then there's also a washer here. It's really difficult to see on camera, so you'll have to take my word for it here, but there's a washer, excuse me, and then a retaining ring right here. Okay, and we got to get that ring out, so you should be able to take a pair of needle nose and then pull that out. Okay, it's really, really small. Okay, we're just going to keep that right there because we're going to be putting all this back together here shortly. Okay, and then you can pull your main drive line out, your axle shaft. That's that other little washer. You got your spring, you got your pinion gear, and then there's a washer resting underneath that. Okay, that's everything. Okay, that's the whole reel. You want to clean this housing out here really good. Take the Q-tips, take the WD-40 or whatever's necessary. Get all this really clean. Okay, and then we're just going to basically go back in the reverse order. All right, and we're going to do all that right now. This is kind of a speed service, so to speak, but I do that, on some of my videos just to kind of help save time. And you get the idea of how the reel goes together, the mechanics and what you do in it. You don't need to watch all the cleaning necessarily. I'd still do that on some videos. This is definitely not going to be one of them, though, just because it was very dirty and it hadn't been used in so long, and it was very time consuming to clean it up. And I also sometimes like to work on reels off camera that I'm not familiar with, and then I'll come back after I've worked on them and do a video like this as well. Just because, when you're not familiar, working on a reel, sometimes you need extra time to work on it. So we're going to put the washer back. Okay, clean off all the teeth in here with that brass wire brush, and then take that Pin Precision blue grease and go back and get that on all the teeth. All right, and that'll work its way in there. Okay, it's going to rest in there like so. Same deal here. We've cleaned this shaft up with our 4.0 steel wool here. We've cleaned it up really well, and then we're going to go back with the blue grease. I'm just going to put a little dab on there just so you can see what that looks like. You don't really need to overdo it, but you want to get a fair amount on there just so it can work its way in to everything, all the moving pieces. Any metal pieces that move, need to be lubed. Okay. Some people like to use oil there. I kind of prefer grease on axle shafts myself, typically. But oil can be used too in a lot of situations. Okay, now we're going to go back with our spring here. All right, now this is where it's a little tricky because you have to press down on this here, way down, so that you can get, it's difficult to see, but there's a little line right there, and you have to hit that line, and you got to figure out a way to get this small washer back on there first. Okay, and then you got to press down on top of that. This is where it's just a little difficult to do and have it make sense on camera, but you'll see what I mean once we're there. So okay, so now I've got the washer on top. And then we got to get this snap ring back in. This is probably the trickiest part, I'd say, of the whole thing, primarily. Sometimes you got to take like a screwdriver to kind of snap that back on. Okay. It's a little difficult to see there. Okay. But then you can let off on it and then it's in place. Okay. All right. Now we're ready to go back here. You want to clean all these surfaces off really well, as usual. And then we'll take that blue grease to these surfaces here. Okay. Okay, and then this goes back this way, okay, meaning this surface here, you can see how it bends over like this. You want that to be facing the handle side here because this is the cam, and the cam rests like that, okay? You don't want to get it the other way because then it just simply won't work, all right? So this is also just a little tricky. You just kind of have to do a little bit of a juggling act here with this, but eventually you can get it in there. You pull down on this shaft, and that's again also a little tricky to do while you're holding this. You can take a pair of pliers and a towel to kind of hold it in place or something like that as well. You just don't want to touch the metal. Okay, so we got that pushed through there, like so. Now, we can get to putting these pieces back in there. Okay, so we've already gone through all this part of it. And we'll just take a little bit more blue grease here to this surface here. It'll get its way worked into all these teeth, so don't worry about hitting every tooth, okay? Okay, and then we're gonna set this back in here, and we're gonna hold it like this so that we can kind of see what we're doing, and we can adjust this cam, okay? You can't really see it, but it's lined up in that slot right there, and that's exactly what you need, okay? You need to do that. Now, I highly recommend taking that reel oil to these holes right here, because these threads on this reel are very, very small, okay? And they're very prone to rusting and breaking off like these others did at one point, probably a long time ago. I'm probably not going to ever be using this reel, but I have a lot of memories of using it myself, and so I want to make sure that it stays in good shape. And you know, it's definitely a hardy piece of equipment, and it certainly could be used. There's nothing wrong with it mechanically. I imagine these are probably considered collectibles these days to people that are into collecting, you know, vintage reels, vintage spin cast reels such as this. So, okay, now we're going to go back to these pieces and parts here. Okay, so we've got this thin washer, and it's got a flat side on it. It's really difficult to see on camera here, but it's there. So if you're having trouble putting it back on, you have to kind of rotate it a little bit and find that flat surface, okay? And again, if you see any rust damage on these threads, I highly recommend cleaning them up the best that you can, and then applying a little bit of penetrating oil on there just to keep it moist and free from any excess future damage, so to speak. Okay, and then we've got this cam lobe here that needs to go in there. And this is a little tricky sometimes. You have to kind of pay attention, but it's got to go down there a certain amount in order for it to be correct. I believe that is correct. We'll see here in a minute. I think it needs to go down just a little bit more. Okay, now it went down. Okay. Sometimes you just got to turn it a little bit more and then it'll go down. So spring, washer, and then you've got your star wheel for your drag. That goes back on. Oh, but before we do that, you want to make sure that you snug up this this nut here. You don't really want to torque it, and it's kind of an act where you have to kind of juggle you have to hold on to the tops of these bars here to kind of hold it in place. Otherwise, it's just going to spin on you. But you just kind of want to gently turn that. Okay. That should be all good. And then we will put our star wheel back on. So you can see, without the cleaning process, we've been doing this for about 20 minutes here. And really anyone that has any, basic, household tools and stuff like that, a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, some WD-40 and, some real lubricants and stuff like that, you can work on this reel. Handle goes next, and then the star washer, like that. And then we got our handle nut. And I believe this handle nut is I forget what size this is. This is a 7/16 here. Okay, gently snug that up. Okay, and now we can see the mechanics here. We can see how this thing is working. It's really kind of revolutionary for its day. By today's standards, we wouldn't think much of it, but this was pretty innovative in its time. So it's something pretty cool to be able to see those mechanics, work like that sometimes. Okay, so now to finish off, what we have next here is these pieces here. Okay, so we've got our button. It rests in there like that. Now make note, there's a little tiny hole right here, okay? And this spring here, all right, needs to go into this hole, all right? And it goes like this, okay? And you got to have that lined up like that once this is set in here, okay? So we're going to set that in like so, okay? And then we're going to find that hole, and we're going to set the spring in like so, and then just kind of rotate it. You're not going to be able to get it completely over the hole, okay, but you need it to just rest there, okay? We've cleaned up, all the, the inside of this, okay? And then we're going to take this, and we're just going to kind of gently move it upright to push that down into the hole, okay? Like so. All right, and then a little bit of Real X oil here. All right, 2 tiny screws left here. But there'll be a lot more videos coming up in the weeks and months to follow. So if you like this kind of work, working on vintage reels, I'd encourage you to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button so you can get the updates on when there's new videos coming out. Remember, you got to turn this when you go to put this back on, like so. Kind of snaps in like that. Okay, pretty cool. All right, and then this, you have to make sure that you pull the pin out here to make sure that this opens up to get this over, like so. And then we're just going to give this screw a few turns. But yeah, many more videos coming up, lots of projects that are going to be going on the bench here shortly of all different kinds, freshwater, saltwater, fly reels actually, a number of spinning reels and conventionals and whatnot. Quite a few rarities actually as well, so stay tuned for that. So, spins like a champ. We can't really test out the drag, but we know that it's applying pressure, okay? So it should be fine. All right, so there you have it. That's the Shakespeare Wondercast model 1795, all spritzed up and ready to look at or to be fished. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please make sure you do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe. Hit that notification button and you will get all the updates as to when there are new videos coming out. And there's going to be plenty more coming out in the weeks and months to follow. We'll catch you then.